Previously on Unfiltered Heart Talks.
Do you think that you were delusional? Or is it a case where you were in love?
I've only been in love once.
We're through. To a certain extent, I believe that some women are. But I equally also believe that some men are also delusional.
I thought to myself that because this guy was in theology, then maybe this is God giving me a second chance at you. I never saw a divorce coming.
I believe that there are relationships that weren't supposed to be joined
that's
together in
true.
the first place. You
Yeah.
know? Because the state can sanction a marriage, but it doesn't mean that God approves of it.
Exactly.
So I got married in 2015. This is going to give away my age. Well, not necessarily. I got married in 2015. And as you know, I dated for a few years before I got
Before getting married, okay.
However, I did get married really young. I think I got engaged being around 22 years old, 21, 22. And then I got married in 2015, right? So what kept me married for so long was, in a nutshell, just the fact that I was so involved in church ministry, you know, to the point where what the church had to say was far more important to me
Than your happiness.
than my happiness.
Wow.
So getting married 23 years old. And you know what's crazy? I remember when I was engaged to get married, there is a famous pastor back home, and I called him. I said, "Hey, can you counsel us to get married?" And he said, "What semester are you in? What year are you in university?" And I said, I think I was in my first, going into my second year. And he said, "Okay, how old are you now?" I said, 22. He said, "No, you're not ready to get married." I said, "Why?" And he said, "You have no finances. And not only that, but you are just going into your second year. It's not a case where you were in your final year and
Or
you
junior
were
going senior.
you know, and you were about to step out into that working world where you could provide the finances you need for your marriage." So I wasn't happy. And I remember also there was another instance where a particular lecturer said to me, he asked me, "Why are you getting married?" And I said, "What do you mean, why am I getting married?" He said, "You're too young. And not only that, you're not compatible." And I was like, who is this man? You don't know me like that. You know, you don't know her. How are you going to say that we're not compatible? But were we compatible in reality? I don't think so. I don't think that we were compatible in one bit. You know, there's a famous writer. She said, if you're going to get married, did I say this in the last episode?
I don't know.
But let me say it. She said, if you're going to get married, and I'm just paraphrasing, and there are challenges before the altar,
Yes.
and you walk to the altar, but there is one single challenge that was not fully resolved, don't get married.
Wow.
And for so often, you find yourself in situations where you see all the red flags,
Tell me about
but you just ignore them.
Tell me about
So it goes back to what I was saying. Men and women were not so much different. Men sometimes are delusional. And to a certain extent, we can call it being in love. And I don't think that I was in love. That's the truth.
Stubbornness, man.
It's just a case where, you know, I wanted to be married, and pastoral ministry you get a nice wife where look like the modern say Ellen White. But not necessarily look like Ellen White, but has
Ellen
that
White character.
character.
Ellen White
Yeah.
character.
Have that Ellen White character, yeah, I say, yeah man, it's a perfect wife for me.
Yeah, because it would look
Yes.
in line with what
And the truth is, oftentimes we neglect our physical needs as men in the church just so that we can get married to someone who fits within that criteria that the church has for you.
Such that image criteria,
Yeah.
yes.
You know, and that's kind of what I did.
Oh wow.
I wasn't necessarily physically attractive, but this person had a good character. So I said, wow, perfect. But it's never good to neglect your physical needs and think about, I'm more so of a character kind. 1%, they don't make the rule, but I would say to any man that you need to make sure that you're physically attracted to the person that you are intellectually attracted to.
Wow.
But for me, I got married and I was way too young. In reality, I wasn't prepared to handle that level of responsibility.
Yes.
Did I handle it financially? Eventually, I turned out to do well. I eventually started low at the bottom. Why for that? I started
Baby.
from the ground and I moved.
Started from the bottom now.
I started from the ground.
Ground zero.
I started from the ground.
Yes.
And I moved up the ladder,
You're not easy.
And God had it that,
Take it out. And you built up, right? You built up.
But I built up and I was doing very well. Landed a very good job. Was doing very well. So financially, I was doing well. The reality is, I got married still being in love with you. But as I mentioned in the last episode, sometimes we just believe as men that, hey, we can move on. We can replace her. We're going to find us somebody who is better than her. But first love, there's something about the first love, man, may I tell you. The first love thing, it's not normal.
Yeah. That's true.
So I got married, and I remember there were times when we would have arguments, and she would say, "You look like you give all of your love to Ebony." She would say that.
Did you know my name?
Yeah, she knew your name because remember I was just coming out of a relationship with you, and then mommy was still in my life, and then there was no separation between me and your mom, which is my mom also.
Yeah. Oof.
So of course she knew you, and in the marriage she could just tell that I wasn't in love with her. Did I love her, appreciated her? Yes, I did, but I wasn't necessarily in love with her. And I think that what we had affected my ability to live out the rest of my days being happy with someone else, who was not you. So yeah, that did have a huge effect on me, as well as there were other issues within the relationship that was happening. And I was just way too young. I was way too young. I wasn't ready for a marriage. That's the truth. If you remember when we were younger and we were sitting down talking about marriage, we were talking about wanting to be married at 27, 28.
Yes, around
Got
that
married
age.
at 21, 22.
That's way too soon. Yes.
I would say this, even if you are in the 1% as a man or as a woman, having a successful marriage, it's never the answer. Meaning that
What do you mean?
it's never something that I would encourage, because 1% never makes the rule.
So let me clarify, because it sounded a little bit jumbled there. So you're saying that you wouldn't encourage somebody to get married that young, even if the marriage survives.
Yes, even if there are experiences of people at that age getting married and having a successful marriage,
You still wouldn't encourage
I still
that
wouldn't
young
encourage
age.
it because I
Okay.
mean it's just 1%.
I just wanted to be clear because I didn't want our audience to be in that same
Right.
loophole that I'm in. Like, what?
Yeah.
What did you say?
So, yeah, and that's just 1%. But for me, I was way too young. I was definitely not ready for a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Then, with you still being in love with you, you shaped my reality of what marriage is, what relationship is, not marriage, but what relationship is and what I wanted as a man in my life. And so for me, it was like not being with you. I still lived my life in search for the next Ebonique. And that's how I ended up even in my last relationship, to the point where I just believed that I had a shot
That's crazy.
at you again.
That's
You know?
crazy.
So we were both going through the same things in different contexts.
Yes.
You know, so
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because we often said that, you know, your last relationship was a counterfeit to me,
Mm-hmm.
and my past marriage was a counterfeit to you.
yeah.
Wow.
And so was I delusional? You know, when my best friend tell me, say, my youth, you're an idiot.
Mercy.
You know,
Why did you say that?
because like after the relationship ended and I started sharing some of the things that I went through in that relationship, it's like, bro, like seriously, you know, love is blind. And
I wouldn't say love is blind.
I think that I was so desperate to be with someone who was a reflection of you, to the point where it's like I was willing to overlook the challenges, the red flags, and everything, the flaws, just to be with this person that reminds me of you.
I remember the afternoon that you were telling me, I think I found somebody that I'm actually really in love with. And I remember telling you.
No, and I said something else. And
you said you finally found somebody that you believe that reminds you. You said you finally found somebody that reminds you of me, and that you think you're really in love. And
how did that make you feel?
I was in my cold era, you know. I couldn't even stand seeing a guy in a suit.
Wow.
You know, I couldn't stand seeing a guy in a suit because I was going through that healing process, trying to detox of all the negative experiences that I went through. And I remember telling you, boy, good for you, I mean, no one a man. You know?
Right.
I just remember telling you that. But wow.
Yeah. The first love thing is a serious thing, you know. If you have that one person that you were so deeply in love with, or that you fell in love with, and that's a person that shaped your reality
And your worldview
of relationships, trust me, it's almost impossible. I believe it's almost impossible to get over it.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, but why did I stay married was because of the church's influence, and I just wanted to stay within that.
You wanted to stay in their good book. Yeah.
Not necessarily wanted to stay in their good books, because there were points when I was just being young, dumb, and stupid. I was living my life. There were moments when I was telling her that she should leave me. There were moments, because I said this to you before, and I say this to anyone. She's a phenomenal person, you know, but I just don't think that, in my view, I don't think that we were meant to be. You know, she wasn't for me and I wasn't for her. I remember in the early dating stages of our relationship, she said to me one day, and this doesn't make her a bad person at all, but I remember I was doing something or saying something, and she said that, why can't you be more like X person?
Oh.
But this guy, when I tell you that this guy is a spiritual to the point where you could call him, well, not Ellen White wouldn't be the right phrase.
Mr. White.
Mr. White.
Yes.
You know, he was so spiritual and holy and that old soul you would
Yes.
find in this individual.
So she said, why can't you be like that person?
Yeah, and we had a huge argument over it. If to the point where even my sister was saying that, yo, I don't know how you should break up with her. But eventually we worked through it, you know, and we got married. But in reality, that was the kind of guy she needed.
Yeah.
I think that guy would have been
Perfect for her.
a more suitable partner. Because even though we were in the same faith, we were still unequally yoked.
Wow. If you like our content, we are also available on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Show us some love over there. Unfiltered Heart Talks.
See you guys. Stay tuned for the next one.